Welcome to the second session of our Workforce Development webinar series. We are so excited to have you here. I see more and more people joining, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So the labor shortage continues to place a heavier and heavier burden on the economy. As companies struggle to find the talent they need, and as more and more people opt out of work, now is the time to invest in new and more strategic approaches to developing talent and helping people find their way in the labor market. My name is Jennifer Kolb, and I'm the Vice President of Business Development at Tallo. And joining me are two special guests, Ron Hetrick, Senior Labor Economist and Director of Staffing Products at Emsi Burning Glass, and Casey Welch, Co-founder and CEO of Tallo. Today, we're going to focus on understanding what impact this next generation of talent is going to have on the workforce of tomorrow. We've only got 30 minutes, and I have no doubt it's going to fly by very quickly. So we encourage you to use the Q&A box so Ron and Casey can answer your questions live. So don't hold back, send over those questions. We want to make this a valuable and impactful conversation to help you with your own strategizing and planning. So we know that the labor shortage is likely here to stay for a while. So we want to kick things off with a poll. So Alexa, if you could launch that poll for us. We want to hear from you. What do you think the key drivers of the labor shortage are? So we've got one, huge numbers of baby boomers are leaving the market at record rates. Two, more and more working age people are deciding against work. And three, national and even global birth rates have plummeted below replacement and have been below 2.1 for the past 50 years, or D, all of the above. Not going to give you any clues, but just take a second, answer the question, and let's see what responses we get back. Give everybody about 10 seconds. There we go. All right, Alexa, what kind of results do we have? Okay, so 30% of people said huge number of baby boomers are leaving the market at record rates. No one said more and more working age people are deciding against work. No one picked the birth rates being lower, and 70% picked all of the above. So we have some people that are right, but I'm not going to give away the answer. Ron, I'll let you do that. So Ron, tell us, was it all of the above? And is there anything else you're seeing in your research?
Yeah, I hate to say anybody's wrong, because even if you said, well, the baby boomers are the key driver, you're probably right, because that's true. But yes, it's the combination that wouldn't be a key driver if we had certainly kept our birth rates up and we had more people working. So yeah, that's the primary reasons. There's actually another aspect as well. Actually, if I could, I'd like to show just two slides really quickly. I know we don't typically do slides here, but I just want to show two things because it's pretty amazing to look at. Basically, it comes down to two things. One is just the people that you have. So that's one thing that we employ, the people that we have. So this is actually our population in three graphs, and I apologize because it's a pretty ugly slide. But if you look at the bottom right, you see the people above the age of 55, our population, that number keeps growing. If we look at people prime age 25 to 54, it was growing until the boomers moved out, and now that number has started to decline. But if you go to the left side, you see that the population of people in our country, 20 to 24 years old, is going straight down. So there's our first driver. And actually, the second thing is, if you think about people that you put to work, you either put the people to work, the people that you birthed, which we haven't been doing, or you do it through immigration. And this is the last thing I wanted to bring up is that our immigration numbers in 2020 just absolutely hit the floor. And if you're thinking, well, maybe this year it's getting better, we're actually down 65% where we were even through the first half of the year last year. So we essentially have had no immigration in the past, almost 2 years now. So these things are all compounding to really drive forward a lot of the pain that we're feeling right now. So I just wanted to make sure we kind of see that that's our backdrop is we're just simply missing a ton of people. Labor force participation is way down, but you can kind of see where, especially when it comes to a lot of the jobs that people are trying to fill with maybe younger people, that they're just simply not around.
Yeah, I think those slides, I appreciate you sharing them. They're super helpful to see that visually. I'm such a visual learner. So why do you think, the labor force participation in general is so much lower?
Yeah, there's really a couple of things happening. With the boomers themselves, they accumulated a lot of wealth, and anybody who had stocks last year or even this year got a really good market. So a lot of people, because of fear and a lot of other issues, just went ahead and retired. And we knew this was going to happen, but we were projecting it over, the next 5 or 6 years. But it looks like a bunch of those people did it in one shot. So I mean, that's a big thing. Now, if you look at this total gap, and when you look at all these people out, there is a number of factors, and they're all legitimate. There's a significant group of people who are like waiting for everything to go away. And I tell people, who ask, when are we going to recover? And I say, well, pick one of these things and you tell me when they're over. So the fear of like a new variant, there's always going to be people who are afraid. So they're staying out. And there's people who are like, I don't want a vaccine. And it doesn't matter where you stand on the issue, but understand that there's always going to be a certain group of people who say, I'm not going to come back in until I'm 100% sure that that's not going to happen. And then you have people who can't get childcare. And, when are they going to be able to do that? Well, when childcare places can hire workers as well. So there's so many things that are kind of fundamentally just keeping us in this stalled pattern that are really kind of driving what we're feeling right now.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Ron, Tallo has some data that we've come out with. It says 74% of Gen Z said that they would consider something like an internship
Mm.
over a traditional 4-year route. What do you think that kind of mentality might have on the workforce?
Yeah. So the reason why I showed that first slide, and I clearly can't impress upon this people enough, is that especially with our younger population, we have less. We keep producing less, and so to get these people to engage these people, we have to do things we never did before. And I think one of the things, obviously, it starts with getting your job descriptions and going, hey, let's be really careful about these minimum requirements. I mean, we've all hated them our whole lives, right? Every time anybody's applied for a job, like, oh, I could do this job, but they want 2 years experience. That's the first thing we have to address. But the second part of that is dealt kind of hand in hand and saying, how do you get access to people earlier? And I'll just bring this up. If you go out and you want to hire the perfect person, understand that probably every other employer sees them as the perfect person too. So you're just renting that person like a sports team would be renting a free agent. And their loyalty is really going to be to themselves because they're the perfect person and that's what they're going to do. But if you kind of can invest in someone before they've really kickstarted their career, that person who's frustrated with these minimum requirements, then as you invest into those people, you're way more likely to get a loyal person back. So I think that that's the importance of going, look, I got a smaller population, so I need to get to them sooner and secure them and grow them in my company.
Yeah, I think it's a really important point. Casey, I'll pass the mic your way. I know you've got a background and a history with that athletic recruiting model. So what thoughts or feedback do you have on that recruiting process?
Yeah, I mean, I think Ron hit the nail on the head, right? If you look at the talent shortage, you just can't produce a bunch of 25-year-old people to work, right? You either have to bring it in from some other area or wait 25 years. But there is another way, right? How do we produce more? And as Ron mentioned, you think about, you can build sports teams, build it through free agency, and we were talking a little bit of this before the call, or they build it through a draft. And how do you build it through a draft, or how do you do it? You reach out to that population early, and you reach out to them often, right? And start to build that rapport. And some of the things that we're seeing is, we had done a survey recently, and it said 97% of people are more likely to consider an employer if they reached out to them before they were looking for a job, right? So get to them early. The other thing is we look at this generational change, right? Generation Z coming in are not millennials. Rob said, or Ron mentioned a moment ago about what if they want to connect, earlier? They want to be more loyal, right? This generation actually is more loyal. They want to work with a company longer. But in order to do that, just like if you think about date to married, they're going to take a little more time to consider it because they have options right now, right? You walk down any street and you're going to see a now hiring side and you're going to see a great wage side. I do think one of the biggest things, though, Jen, that we're seeing is it's not all about higher earnings. That's right. This group wants to work longer. And we saw 87% of them said they would take a more meaningful career versus higher earnings, right? So it's not just about we're open for business and we have great paying jobs. So does everybody else in the country, right? What else are you doing? How do you help? And how do you continue to cultivate that talent as it starts to come onto the market?
Yeah, that's a good point. So if it's not, and I want to get both of your takes on this, if it's not, hey, we're paying the best or, hey, we have this best benefit. What should employers be talking about to start recruiting that early talent? Ron, I'll pass it to you first.
Oh man, I love this question. Meaningful work. People they want to know that the work they're doing has value. With Gen Z more than any gen that I've seen so far. Think about it. The boomers, there were so many of them, and they were competing with each other. They just wanted a job. And then we kind of still had that mentality. I came up through Gen X and we were competing with boomers for jobs, and they were really qualified. And so we just kind of wanted a job. But as there now are more opportunities, just like Casey said, people are like, well, what is it that I'm going to be doing? And I think employers have to learn how to start selling what they do as the contribution that it does versus the job. Hey, you come in here and you assemble goods. What does that mean? No, you're assembling this and it goes into this car, and these cars are amazing. Have you seen these? Like, that's when you talk about the purpose of a job versus what the job is itself. I think that would be, it's kind of the biggest thing that I'm looking at right now. And if you don't have that passion for your company, your job, good luck selling it.
That's a good point. Casey, what do you think about that?
Yeah, well, I'll just add another one, and I echo exactly what Ron said. And so many people, again, purpose and fit, right? Also highlighting things like, if they want to stay with you longer, right? That means that job that they're coming into most likely won't be their job that they go into in the future, right? So how do you continue to sell those other parts? And that's where, Ron hit on it. The job is going to change. Products are going to change. Companies are going to change, right, as they go forward. But how do you highlight that growth aspect to it, right? We do more than this, right? We do more than creating this widget or this product, right? We're about this as a whole. And no matter if a pandemic comes, if it doesn't come, if something else happens, right? What that company is rooted in, their culture, and it's more than foosball tables and ping pong tables, right? That's not what we're talking about. Ron talked, I came up through the millennial generation, right? So my generation was, we want to come in and we want everything handed to us, right? Ron's generation had to take the jobs from the boomers, and we were like, you know what? It's more about enjoying. It's more about this. It's more about that versus, do I have the skills, the passion in other areas?
That makes a lot of sense. And what I think is interesting too is we've seen some data come out about when people are, and this new generation, Gen Z, are making decisions about those future employers. So going back to the narrative of, okay, we need to reach out early, we need to reach out often. We know that 70% of early talent are deciding on their future employer in high school or in early college. And that puts, I think, a lot of pressure on the educators, right? They're in a different space now to funnel early talent into the workforce much sooner than they might have had to in the past, because we need more people in the workforce. So, Casey, I would send this question your way. How can educators at K-12, 2-year, 4-year level, really across the board, how can educators be more prepared to understanding these trends and these topics and to get students prepared for the jobs of today?
Yeah, well, they are closer to the workforce than ever before, right? In the past, all we did was focus on that college graduate getting ready to come out of the career fair, and that was their first interaction, right? It's too late. Kids don't even, you touched on it earlier, they don't even need to go to college now, right? They could go a certificate, they could go a credential, they could go a 2-year path, 4-year path. They have a lot of options that didn't used to be in play when the labor market, was so tight there. And now you throw in the added ability, and I saw somebody threw in a chat talking about the phenomenon around remote work, right? Now you can work anywhere, right? You can work and go to school. You can do all these different jobs. So I look at the educator's job now and go, it's also their role in saying, how do we better prepare? How do we fit? But more importantly, and I think one of the areas where we can really win is, what if we got them in the right place to start with, right? We put a lot of stock in what college major we go to. And, most people that go to college change their major 2 to 3 times. They change their careers 5 to 7 times. What if we got it that right from the very beginning, right? And we expose them to these are all the opportunities that are out there to better get them down to that path that they're going to find purpose and meaning in from the very beginning, then find out if they have the skills, get them in a place, and educating. So I think educators can play a bigger role because they are actually closer to the workforce than they've ever been, especially as you look at, the high school population.
I want to speak on it really quick because I one of the things that I've been telling these universities more than ever, you need to be, I mean, it needs to be about the companies that you are affiliated with and how fast people can start to, hey, such and such is in this market. We have an agreement with them. Like our students, it's even more than interns, but they actually will do things where they are actually working there as part of their coursework. And, this kind of really this integration, and you kind of start to sell that. I mean, we know that, a lot of, I keep using the athletic reference, but we know that a lot of kids will go to a college because they want to work with a certain coach and they really like that program. And I would love to see that kind of thing extended over to the academic side, because as you're saying, colleges are now going to compete. I've been talking so many employers, like we're thinking about dropping the college requirement out of our job description. And I'm like, okay, well, first off, you're entering into the part of the labor pool that's just completely destroyed right now. That population is really getting hit hard. But it really does start to strike us like, look, if that's the case, if employers start dropping that requirement, then even more, you're going to be like, no, you want to come here and you want to do this. And the reason is we're going to launch you on that path that you want to do. We're going to come alongside of you. So I think more than just saying there are classes that you take here, I think these are the relationships that we have in the community.
Yeah. And that just sparked an interesting point, Ron. I think we're seeing a lot in employers investing in programs and curriculums to be skilled, coming right out ready for the job. Are there any sectors or companies or anything you're seeing in all of these conversations, Ron? Anybody standing out to you as really paving the way or doing this differently?
It's unfortunate that it has to be this way, but all of the newer industries just seem to get it. Like a lot of these newer companies just seem to understand that, what drives it. You see like the way an Elon Musk talks in the press, how he mentions things in the progressive way that he looks at what's happening in the market and labor force and everything. You can see that he's completely unsaddled by bureaucracy. And I think that the problem that you have with these very mature organizations, in the past, their brand name was strong enough for them to get whatever they wanted. But now that brand name, especially amongst younger generations, is like putting on your grandparents' clothes. Like you don't want to do that. So I think that those companies, and I do talk to them. I've been at the headquarters of some of these companies, and I tell them, I'm like, look at your way you present yourself to the market. Look at your website. Look at how you present your things. I'm like, it's covered in like old, and it almost feels bureaucratic when you're looking at it. And I think the people that can figure out ways of approaching what they do with, and it goes back to that, find the excitement of what you do and the value that you bring and go it from that angle. But yeah, I mean, these IT companies are going to have a shortcut on you, but it doesn't have to be like that. I mentioned Elon Musk specifically because he does auto manufacturing, for crying out loud. Like that's an old industry, but he's found a way of making that exciting again.
Yeah, and I don't want to shift us too much, but I think there's a lot still there to unpack. But we just got a really interesting question in the chat, and I want to make sure we talk about this. Do you see a role for experienced, innovative boomers coming back as part-time consultants while the market dynamics kind of level out? Ron, I'd go to you with that question.
2 comments on this really quick. One, the knowledge transfer aspect of things is still incredibly valuable. When you say part-time consultant, the way I've always approached this, and I've been talking about this for 20 years, the intent is not to bring people back like full-time. A lot of these people don't want full-time, but if you show them the opportunity of saying, you're going to come in and you're going to help us bring up our next group, or, we need the knowledge that you have and we value that. And we want, hey, if you want to stay semi-retired, that's great. But if you could just give us a bit to help us bring up our next people. So that way you're doing 2 things. If you're paying these people a lot of money, you really have kind of an end of date. We need you to accomplish this task. And the second thing you're doing is preventing yourself from reabsorbing them, which is the danger. So sometimes people bring people back and they become reliant on them. And that's not a good long-term strategy. I think we got to be kind of careful about that. But I hope to see that this is the case. I will tell you right now, just a kind of hard fact to know, more and more, because of the wealth generated by the boomers, they are retiring and leaving the labor force completely in ways that we've never seen before. So there was a theory that people, as they, they love to work, right? Boomers love to work. They work. No, they were earning money and they loved to have a job. Well, now they've made their money and they're retiring, and now they love to be retired. So it's that balance of whether we can get them back, and then can we engage them in a way that it's exciting to them.
Yeah, it makes me think, Casey, I know a lot of the partners we work with are leaning towards having that leadership be mentors and kind of help support cultivating the upcoming class and investing in that mentorship before they're employed. So for example, if we look to Boeing, who is setting an incredible example, I think, with their mentorship program, supporting students through their first year of college, those students aren't guaranteed to go work at Boeing one day. So they really are investing in talent with no guarantee on the other side. Casey, any thoughts on just mentorship in general and what those two generations working together might look like?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think it's twofold. You talk about some of the unique parts. We talked earlier in this conversation about purpose and meaning and liking and wanting to do what you love. Well, that's not a novel idea, right? If you look at how many people, Ron has said, hey, I'm getting ready to retire. Now I'm going to go do something I love to do, right? Well, same thing this group coming up is saying, like, look, rather than wait till the end to do that, could we do this at the beginning and make money, right? And so when I think about that knowledge transfer that Ron just talked about, and I think it is huge because look, you can get trained on the skills, right? But that experience, right? Those scars that people have gotten through the years, right? From experience. If you can say, look, you tried to transition it down to, X and millennials quick, and that didn't get transferred there quick. We need to pass it. If we can pass it straight to the Gen Z coming up, right? They're technology savvy, they understand it, they want to work, they want to learn. If we can do a really good job at transitioning that in bite-sized chunks, to Ron's point, millennials or baby boomers don't want to come back in. But just like Jen, you brought up the example of Boeing, right? So they do this great program with us where they peered and actually used technology, right? So taking some of their great mentors and experience from across the country to be able to mentor these students from all walks across the country. So whether you were in rural Iowa or inner city New York, right, you could get paired with a mentor, do it all virtually, be able to transfer some of that data and get people excited about careers and interest. And I think that, to me, is almost as valuable as a lot of people talk about an internship or an opportunity, right? Sometimes it's helping that person get on the right path to where they can go in their life is more important than a job, right? It can really change them. We can get them onto the path, get them into the workforce quicker in an area that they're going to want to stay and retain it. And so I'm seeing a lot more employers looking at that. And to Ron's point, if you want to get it, you got to invest in them. And what better way to invest and engage than transferring the knowledge to that group, getting them in those pathways and cultivating them up through.
Yeah, right. I mean, we're all collectively, right, in this pool or this pie, if you will, if we're all working to increase prepared talent in your industry. I see a question that's come through in our Q&A, whether no matter what industry you're looking at, if as employers, as to your employer institutions, you're working to build interest and understanding of your industry, your piece of that pie is always growing. So even if you're investing talent that don't work for you yet, you're making an impact, a substantial impact in your industry overall. So I like that a lot. Another question, and this, I think, Ron, goes to your point earlier about how do you identify, sell yourself, recruit to the early generation. We talk a lot about remote work, right? Yeah. If you go and look at a job board these days, people are, putting it right in the title of the job description, remote. So is that unique enough anymore
I want to talk about that.
Yeah.
I think a really important survey came out a little while ago as a father of someone who just graduated college in perfect Gen Z. Gen Zs actually are the ones who want to be in the office. So they asked people like, how do you look at remote versus like in the office? And the generation that was like, look, we'd like to be in the office. And my daughter was one of those people. That was them. And, she was like, I'm not going to work for a place if I have to be remote. I want to be isolated all the time. These are people who just came out of school where they were being isolated and they can't stand it. So a lot of these people are looking for community. They're looking for some way of being together. So I think we've got to be like, I've been talking to so many people about this and people are like, it's the new normal. This is all changed. And I'm like, we're way over here right now because it's the situation that we're in. But I think there will be, the pendulum's over here, but it's going to swing back a little bit. Remote is here to stay. But I think the idea of what's not here to stay, and I mean, I think we'd all love to see it go away, is that, 50, 60 hours a week in the office, where you just destroy your whole life. we wrote about in Demographic Drought is this generation's not really looking for a work-life balance. They're looking for a life-work balance. Like, do you care about me to let me kind of live my life? But they still want, they still grow those relationships. So I think that if you're going down the remote path, I think you've got to figure out ways of saying, well, what do you gain out of that versus if you're here's what you got to be careful about. You don't want to hire a person who's like, I'm just looking for a remote job so I don't have anybody looking at me or doing anything, and I'm just going to be a deadbeat sitting at home on my couch and I'm not motivated at all. It's like, you've got to be really structured in the way that you approach this, and be careful about a person who's like, I'm only looking for a remote, without understanding, like, the motivations there. You want people who still want to be a part of your organization. I talked about at the beginning, people whose whose value is to the organization and not just purely to their own brand. So I think we're still finding our way on remote, and I refuse to believe that we've solved this. I think we're still in the middle of it, and I think some companies are going to get creative. They're getting creative. Hey, you're in the office these days a week, or we have days that we all meet. Those kind of things should remain a standard. And we talk about you're doing everything to get people, but let's not get dumb about it. You don't sell your soul to make, to pander to every possible scenario. You just have to, I think where we need to get a lot more creative is in the way that we hire, in the way that we open up our arms to broader audiences without requiring so many things from them.
Yeah, and Ron, in past conversations, you've shared with me a little thoughts on that, around specifically taking things like certain years of experience, or taking certain things that you would see in a traditional job rec out. Any helpful feedback there?
Yeah, so anybody on this call, probably everybody's listening. I mean, we've all been through, different jobs and everything. I can tell you, I mean, I've hired people that after 2 to 3 months, they knew. I mean, anything that they knew that they already were pretty good on that job. They knew the industry, they knew all these things in and out, and yet you still see all these 2-4 year requirements. If someone's sharp, if they're a rock star, I mean, and I'm a hockey fan. When Sidney Crosby was 18, he was drafted in the NHL and he started playing immediately, and he was one of the stars of his team because he was great at what he did immediately. And I just don't like this idea that, well, you haven't done this, you haven't served your time. This generation doesn't have to do that. If they're a rock star, they're a rock star. So, this idea that you're doing this and we've predefined when this can happen or when that can happen, I mean, we got to blow those constructs up.
Yeah, I agree. I'm extra passionate about this because I work on a team with people who have the most diverse backgrounds: educator, debt collector, college admissions rep. I mean, it helps us just in creativity and collaboration to have unique mindsets. And I appreciate that. We are running out of time, and there's one really good question that came in for the Q&A. Ron, I'll punt it to you first. Are you seeing any trends with your data in any sort of industry in particular? Is there one industry that's really struggling more than another?
Yeah, anybody who's trying to hire somebody below the $20 an hour, they're all dying. I have in the presentations that I'm giving right now, I'm speaking everywhere it seems. What I talk about is that there is a misperception, and the reason why we do this is because we look at the population as a total, and that's a completely wrong way of doing this. You have to look at the labor force. If you look at our labor force, the vast majority of our labor force has at least an associate's degree. So, we are a very educated country, and yet we're a service economy. So we have all these service jobs, and as I always joke, we're a service economy with no one here to serve us. So when you go back to those, if the younger generation is getting smaller and we're not, immigration is so incredibly low, we're really struggling to find these service jobs. And I think it's going to lead, maybe to a fundamental way that we change the model of what service even means, the amount of hours that we're open, all of those types of things. The kind of struggles that we see in the STEM level, it's odd. If you look at the labor force, if I were to take each labor force by education and go before COVID to now, the only one that's above its level are people with a bachelor's degree. So that population is actually growing. The labor force is actually growing. All the other ones are way behind where they were. So, I mean, we got to be careful here, especially as our skilled tradespeople keep declining, to not oversell. It's not, colleges need to get probably even more creative as far as even skilled trades go, but we need those people desperately.
Yeah, I agree. Well, as we wrap, I have one question, and I'm going to ask Casey, you answer it from the perspective of early talent. Gen Z. Ron, I'm going to ask that you answer it from the perspective of a college or a company or someone who represents a workforce economic development group. So Casey, we know Gen Z has told us 55% Gen Z has said they feel less prepared for their next steps in their career post-pandemic. What, if I am early Gen Z talent, what's the first thing I should be doing right now?
I think the first thing you should be doing is going out and starting to basically get rid of all your perceptions that you had beforehand, right? This educational conveyor belt system that we've all been put on for years. And then, we don't jump off until we're ready to graduate college or whatever that is, right? You have more opportunity than many of the generations before. You have a great chance to jump in and go straight up really fast, right? In a lot of different areas. And as Ron mentioned earlier, right, it's not just companies are starting to become more open to the way that they were before. So you have no better opportunity than right now, even though it might seem like a bigger challenge than ever. So go out there, right? Put yourself on as many, as you look at different platforms to be able to showcase, to be able to educate. There's opportunities out there. There's opportunities in a lot of different ways. And so find the ones, right, that fit you, that align to you, and go ahead and put yourself out there, because I think of all the generations, I'm most excited and most optimistic of what this generation could be to our future workforce, if provided the opportunity.
Yeah. Appreciate that, Casey. Ron, for you,
I can't remember my part of the question. Sorry, go ahead.
What is the first step a college or a company should be doing right now to make sure they're tapping into Gen Z early talent?
Yeah, we keep talking about everything has to be go-to. Stop putting signs up. Stop waiting for people to come to you and go to them. And career fairs, sure, great. How about you hang out at the restaurants or clubs in the towns that these people hang out? Like, go to them. Go find these people. Be active. Pick up the phone and call versus waiting for people to call you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Well, Casey, Ron, we knew it would go by really quick. Hopefully everyone attending has learned something new that they didn't know before joining the webinar. So thank you to everyone who attended. Casey, Ron, thank you both so much for your time answering these questions. We appreciate everyone who joined. We're going to throw up a slide here. We have another session coming up on January 12th, actually by our VP of Data Insights at Tallo to be joining us to dive into this data a little bit more. So again, Casey, Ron, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.